Charts today comes to you from New York. Glorious sunny day here. It's going to be 26 degrees tomorrow. I've been here seeing clients and I've just been to see Bloomberg as well. Lots of talk about tariffs, of course, and markets. So let's get down and have a look at some charts. So I'm back in my room, and of course the big question here on everyone's mind is the bull market for stocks over? And are tariffs having a big impact, and will we see the beginning of a new sell-off? Looking at the Nasdaq 100 here, we see we have these upside targets, both pointing to the same level. Different buying thrusts have given us targets at that level, but we're not quite meeting those targets now. We've got a sell-off, and key here is we've got an orange target that will turn red on your Bloomberg if we make a new low. That thrust, that selling thrust, will be confirmed. All those sellers will be sitting, basically those shorts will be sitting there, and anyone long will start to think about selling, and that target will be activated, and that gives us a potential downside to around 14,500. So really quite key there. What we're watching for is a sell-off to a new low. This average here, this is a 21-day midpoint average that comes as part of the Linton studies. And also we've got these price levels that are also part of the studies, because these previous price levels are really important to see whether they hold. So we still have to apply resistance and support. If we move above 22.2 on the Nasdaq, we deactivate. All those bears effectively have been deactivated, and that target comes off the chart. So it's only activated if we move to a new low. So that's the real question for the Nasdaq. So let's take a look at some of the individual stocks. So Apple, here we had an upside target given on Apple, downward selling thrust, another one here that was met. They're in bold if they've not been met, and they're less bold if they have been met. So we've got support levels here on Apple, 211, 208. Those levels need to hold, but we've got a downside target into the 190s, 191. So that is sitting there against us at the moment. Microsoft, multiple downside targets of selling thrusts. So those selling thrusts have produced the multiple downside targets. This is what we call targets in train. We've got support levels here, 361, 362 from previous low points, but that is the reality. The targets are in train there. Of course, NVIDIA, on everyone's mind, has NVIDIA topped. We have these upside targets on NVIDIA, and if you go back a long way, you can see these buying thrusts producing those upside targets, but now we're not meeting those targets. That is a little bit bearish there. We do have downside targets, but again, an upside target that would be activated with a move above 120. So that's really what we want to see on NVIDIA. Are we going to move above that level and activate that upside target? But remembering, we've got a lot of resistance now to fight. We've got these previous resistance levels, and these bearish engulfing candles have been quite effective on NVIDIA. Tesla, the thrust on Tesla has been up to the target, then down to the target. We've got a new little upside target, but again, we've got lots of resistance to fight. If we move for those levels, then we're looking back to previous lows. So the targets, the thrusts on NVIDIA have been faster, and you can see here we've got these levels mentioned here. So on most of our charts, we're 2 to 1. Here we're half a unit to 1. Dow Inc. Downside targets. It just shows that there have been stocks that have been in a downward trend for some time, breaking to new lows. We look to that next downward target. This was the selling thrust. That was the target met. On to the next one. That's why it's not in bold, because it's been met. Looking at Chevron, not all stocks falling. So Chevron making 2-year highs. Those levels there, multiple levels that were set 2 years ago, so be key to break those. But we are seeing here a 2-year high move. That we might see some resistance around 173, 172, but the reality is this is one stock making 2-year highs, so not everything is falling. IBM, of course, has been living in the shadow of NVIDIA for some time. Here we see upside targets again. Remembering you can do these on any chart on your Bloomberg, really quite straightforward. Here we've got the levels.
Again, if we break this 266 level, then we look to that target. So the key thing is to use the support and resistance levels as well as confirmation that you're breaking. Another one that's been very strong is McDonald's. This stock has actually tripled over the last 4 years, and we see these upside targets, but really this again looking much stronger. Support levels to watch. 300 is a pretty key level now, but we are seeing upside targets there for McDonald's. MMM, 3M, so looking very strong. Upside targets met. Got a new little downside target and no new upside targets. So got to watch for that. That's orange. That will only turn red if it's activated below that level, which is sitting around 145. We activate that level, then we get a little red downside target. But for the moment, upside targets met. Remembering those are just generated from buying thrust previously. This one has been generated from a little selling thrust. Merck. Downside targets were pretty clear all the way down for Merck, but now we're seeing potential recovery. But remembering that recoveries can fail, we've got really $100 there is pretty critical as a level, and we are just falling away again. But the key thing is, will we make a higher low and then a higher high? That's what we'd be looking for there with Merck. And on Travelers, we're seeing this multiple upside targets. So that's really quite key. Again, you want to break those previous levels of resistance. That's sitting at around 270, but we've got good upside targets there. So all in all, we've got very mixed pictures going on here. Apple, lower high, lower low. You can't ignore that. And Microsoft, again, lower high, lower low. So we're seeing that as a feature on a lot of these tech stocks. But as I say, not everything is falling. Chevron looking pretty good in the Dow 30. I just went through the Dow 30 and just pulled out the ones that had upside targets. And here we see McDonald's, 3M, and Merck. So really quite key. And then Travelers was one of the better ones. Now, the one that everyone's talking about, of course, is the gold chart, making new all-time highs, big upside target there on your system. So really quite key, and we can see all of the upside targets from previous, and gold is looking very strong indeed. So that's one chart making new highs. Remembering, as technical analysts, we love new highs. Anyway, that's it for today. It's Friday. Want to get back out there in the sunshine. Have a great weekend, and see you next week. I'll be back in London. Bye for now.